what I do is called the three principles. It's called the three principles because a principle is something that is always there. It's something that's ever present, it's reliable, and it's just a constant thing that whether you believe in it, whether you don't believe in it, it doesn't need you to believe in it because it's always there. So let's use gravity as an example. So gravity is a principle. If you drop something, it will always fall. It's never going to be an exception. It will always fall as long as the rules of gravity apply. Another principle would be we don't look at it like a principle, but it's something that's a constant and that just works that way. Let's say the world is round, right? They used to think that the world was flat. Somebody used to have a job on a ship to sit high up in the mast and look out with a binocular and see if they could see the end of the world because they didn't want to fall off the edge of the world. Once they knew that the world was round, it changed the way they saw things. And so we call that a paradigm shift, when the world thinks about something one way and then suddenly you learn something new and different and suddenly you see it in a completely different way. Once they saw that the world was round, they knew that they didn't need this guy to be at the top of the ship anymore. It's funny, it's like a tiny little aspect, but it's just when you see something different, new things apply. It just looks different. Another example would be germ theory. Before they knew about germs, they did anything and everything mixing germs together. So there's a very famous story a few hundred years ago. There was this guy who noticed that when the surgeons came from the morgue, they'd just been cutting up dead bodies. When they came from the morgue to deliver babies, more babies and more mothers, more the mothers, I think, that were dying because they were being infected. Now, they didn't have those words in those days, but they saw this as a phenomena. So this guy said, how about you wash your hands before touching those babies? And it's so interesting when you read about it. He had to fight with them to wash their hands because when you don't see something a certain way, it's not obvious to behave in a certain way. And they thought it was just totally unnecessary and time wasting to wash their hands. But guess what? They washed their hands, less women were dying. So they knew they were onto something, that there's something that we can't see that's being transferred that they didn't know about before. And that, again, is a paradigm shift. You start to see something differently. Now let's get to the three principles. So the three principles are not going to mean that much to you as I say them. It's very unlikely that you're going to get a lightning bolt min hashamayim and you start to see everything differently. But it's a beginning in understanding that there are principles that govern the way our minds work. They're principles. They're constant. They're never changing. It's not a theory. You'll see straight away that it's just an obvious thing. But if you don't see it as a principle, if you don't see it as this is just the way we work as a fact, then you don't see life like that through that lens. When you start to see the way you work in a principle fashion as just something that just is that way, the world is, and gravity just is there, when you start to see it with that degree of certainty, things start to look different. It's something that keeps changing because you start to see each new thing in your life through different lenses. The principles, they're just words. You have to get sometimes more specific when you're referring to an aspect or an idea. And I'm not talking about anything deep or complicated, just a simple aspect. The fact that we're spiritual and the fact that we are connected to that spirituality, and that spirituality is the essence of who we are, and it's the perfection of who we are, and that it's the potential of who we are, and that is always going to expand us and is perfect. Don't worry so much about the words. It's more the concept behind the words that they're describing. The words themselves that are used are mind, thought, and consciousness. Mind refers to the power plug of existence, as the fact that we have a spiritual essence, and that the spiritual essence is who we are, and that we're connected to that spiritual essence all the time, that it's bigger than us. It's not us, it's bigger than us, and we're part of that. And that idea of that is something that we expand on and see in different ways and with different metaphors, and it expands our understanding of who we are rather than all the things around it that we think we are and that we've been told we are. So that's the principle of mind. Can you see? It's just a principle. It's just a fact that there's a spiritual essence to who we are, and that it's a part of everything. It's part of your body and it's part of your mind. It just is everything. And so that's what powers your mind. That's what powers. So your brain is just a piece of meat. It's just a processor like the computer. Your mind is the programming, and your mind is spiritual. You can't see it, you can't touch it. You'll never be able to track it in any way because it's invisible. It's spiritual. It's not even in me necessarily. It's something bigger than me. Something that I connect to and I'm part of. I hope that's not doesn't sound too vague. That's the principle of mind. The principle of thought is the fact that we are always living in a world of thought. We think we're living in our experience. We're not. We're living in a world of thought. You're experiencing thoughts right now about this video. You might be hearing the words and just staying very present and just hearing them and connecting to them. But even that, you're getting your own thoughts about what I'm saying. You're hearing it via thought. Everything that's happening to you in your experience right now is via thought. And I'm not talking about thought as a conscious thing that you think. I'm talking about thought as something more basic and fundamental than that. It's an energy, again, that you can't see, an energy that's coming into your body that is a unit of information, right? It can come via a thought, it can come via a feeling, it can come via just something you're experiencing, but it's always thought. And we always experience anything in our life via thought. We're not experiencing the experience, we're experiencing always our thinking. Again, it's a principle, it's just the way we work. There's nothing to argue with, really. We know we live in our heads, we know that, but we don't always see it in a principle way, in a way that it's always working like that. And when you start to see it in conjunction with real life, sometimes we fight against it, but that's always what it is. We're always experiencing our thinking, and knowing that gives us the edge. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And the final principle is consciousness. Consciousness as a principle is the fact that we are aware, the fact that we have a seamless existence. We don't go through life having this thought. We just don't see it like that. It doesn't come like that. We'd be schizophrenic probably if that was how we experience life. We experience life very seamlessly. I'm having a million thoughts. Again, that was everything that's going on and everything I'm saying. But I'm not conscious and aware of each thought. I'm just aware of my general being. It just flows. It just happens. And some people call it like the special effects department of life. And it's not a question of good or bad, right or wrong. It's definitely right because it's part of our existence. It's part of the perfection of our existence. But it's also, if you see it like that, you start to understand why it is that we don't see the other two principles always. Because consciousness kind of tricks us into thinking it's so real, thinking that this is a problem, thinking I have to get involved here, thinking that if I don't do this, then something's going to happen. And what we do in the three principles field is we talk about the implications of the principles. They're not tools. They're not things that you can apply to life and okay, I'm going to use the principles here and see what comes out. It's not a tool. It's an understanding that once you see things in that light, you see things differently. And that's why it's real change, because real change comes via insight. Insight is when you have an idea or a connection or just a simple thought. It doesn't have to be big. A simple thought that starts to see and change the way you see something, and all of a sudden nothing on the outside has changed, but everything on the inside has changed. And that's what we're aiming for, and that's what I hope to explore with you if this is the direction that you wish to go in.